This is a CW Spiral, a podcast run by two Barchies and a Bughead. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network, the latest news, and in-depth spoiler-filled discussions of some of our favorite shows on the CW. We're back with another pod that is about the destruction of something we love, but new eras for everybody. Before we launch into that, we do have to talk about Pretty Little Liars and Riverdale somehow sharing the same universe now because Roberto can't be stopped.
When I logged onto the internet this morning, I didn't think this was going to be what I saw. The first thing that I saw was that Riverdale exists in the Pretty Little Liars universe.
It's a mess. I mean, it's a throwaway line, and he didn't even think it was going to be able to stay. And now that it is, I'm like, but sir, you're telling us that Riverdale, which also means Greendale, exists along with the Rosewood and Millwood.
In Rivervale.
Oh my God, yes. It's too much.
The quote from Roberto where he said, "We just wrote that in. We didn't think it would stay." And it's like, Roberto, come on, you play a little too much.
I know. I don't think anyone thinks about the wider connotations of that, because it's not just a throwaway line that connects Riverdale to Pretty Little Liars Original Sin. It connects Riverdale to Pretty Little Liars, the original series. It connects both of them, Pretty Little Liars series, to Chilling Adventures of Sabrina and Kitty Keene. There's a whole multiverse out there, and one little line's connected at all.
Two Lucy Hales.
Yes. And it's one no one would have expected. I guess we should have, though, because Roberto does what he wants. But it blew me when I watched that the scene, because it's just Imogene and Tappy talking to Eddie Lamb. And he just says, "The Sisters of Quiet Mercy in Riverdale." And I was like, what? Sir, please say no. But apparently the cast were excited. Alex Iono, I think that's how you pronounce his name, who plays Sean. He wants there to be a rivalry between the Millwood High Steppenwolves and the Riverdale Bulldogs. And Roberto wants to do a football game between them if he can. He doesn't know how far they can push this shared universe, but he'd really like to do it. And I'm like, don't.
No, that doesn't sound like something either of the shows need. And just to backtrack, it's really interesting to think that A exists in the Riverdale universe. Wouldn't I feel like Eddie, or not Eddie, you have me saying Eddie with this. No, who's Eddie? Where did I say Eddie from?
Eddie
anyway.
Lamb.
Oh, okay, yeah, Eddie. My mind's all jumbled because of this mess. Imagine A would have been obsessed with Betty.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no! Now I just see another storyline for her.
Right? I can't do it. It's a whole mind maze, and I want to get out of it.
I know. Someone tell him no.
You'd totally buy it coming from his mind, though. Totally buy it.
It would. I mean, Riverdale's going off though for season 7. So, and we're currently in the 50s. Yeah. But they have to come back. You know what? Let me not try to figure a way for them to do it, because I'm sure they're doing it back there somewhere. Someone's going to say Millwood or Rosewood in season 7. I just know they are.
What was the other town from the Pretty Little Liars universe? That other spin-off show. Was it Ravenswood?
Oh yes. Oh, why are they all wood?
I don't know.
I think it is Ravenswood.
It's all Dale and Riverdale's universe.
But that's so lighthearted though. I mean, we are selling him NO with a little heart next to it, but at least it's the lightest news that's come out recently. All the heavy stuff has just been Warner Brothers Discovery and that fire over there. I mean, even so much so that people thought Gotham Knights got canceled, and that was a part of the shows that got axed, even though it hasn't aired yet at all.
I was casually scrolling through my timeline over the weekend and saw Gotham Knights trending. And now we know from experience, anytime you see Gotham Knights trending, that's not a good thing. And I checked in, and everyone's like, Gotham Knights have been cancelled. All these big reputable Twitter sources were starting to post that Gotham Knights have been cancelled. Turns out it was a complete misunderstanding. It wasn't. And the showrunner, Natalie Abrams, confirmed that the following morning in a tweet, just with a simple, no, it has not been cancelled. But of course, Twitter jumped on it like it was today's news, tomorrow's news, and turned it into a big circus saying, yes, Gotham Knights has been cancelled. And like it wouldn't have made sense to cut it. Like again, we'll look at the week we're talking about. It could have it easily happened, but it didn't. Gotham Knights lives to fight another day. I don't know if we'll say that this time next year, but for now, Gotham Knights lives to fight another day.
That was a bit of wishful thinking, huh? Like it was like they were trying to convince the CW, like gaslight me, like, oh, did we cancel Gotham Knights?
Exactly. And they don't need to cancel any more things right now. Like at all. I'm not even that excited about Gotham Knights. So I'm just like, can we get the chance to see it before everyone is like, it's a flash from the pan. It's not staying. It doesn't deserve to stay. And I'm like, okay, I know we're all hurt and angry, but please just let us see the product all the way through. We know the trailer didn't give us much that we were happy about, but the show might give. You just have to give it a chance.
Exactly. And I'm not one of these people who just mindlessly consumes any content, but after the year we've had with the CW, the fact they've lost half of their lineup, I will be consuming this show happily. So give it a chance, for goodness sake. I don't expect it to be on the par with Superman and Lois or any of the HBO Max shows or even the Marvel shows. You don't expect that from normal CW shows, but like, give it a chance, for goodness sake. I mean, I will go on record and say I'm glad it's not cancelled. I know we've all been hard on it, but I'm glad it's not cancelled. At least give it a chance. That's all we're asking.
I know. And they are, thankfully. And I really do hope people don't everyone should at least turn into the pilot. Well, no, give it 3 episodes because CW pilots aren't known for being the best thing. 3 episodes and then hop.
Yeah, give it my tried and true 4-episode test.
Yes, the Reed test. What we don't necessarily need to test though is the Flash. I know they spent $200 million on it, but like with the Ezra Miller news that just keeps coming, Warner Brothers Discovery is in a very tricky place. And I know the Hollywood Reporter put out an article where they said that there are 3 scenarios that they can move forward with. If they want to continue with the movie, would be that Ezra has to go home to their family farm and get professional help. And then later they could explain their behavior, and I'm assuming an exclusive interview, and then do limited press. And so the Flash would come out on June 23rd, 2023. I don't know if that's a situation that is going to be happening for Ezra, but they did say that their mom has been around them. So that's good.
Yeah, I feel like any other week, we could talk about how Warner Brothers has no other choice but to scrap this movie. But I think what we've learned is they're not going to do it. But that hasn't stopped the Ezra Miller situation continue to spiral into the headlines. So I want to say their hands are tied, but they're not portraying themselves as though their hands are tied. So I do think maybe if Ezra gets the help they need, it could turn things around, at least for the promotion team. But I still don't think this is something you can just brush under the rug at this point. There's no right way of saying that. This is not the way Warner Brothers wanted it to go, and the movie should not be carrying on with a situation like this carrying on in the background. And I say that as someone who is really looking forward to the movie. It's a very conflicting situation, and I don't want to conflict or contradict myself by saying anything here, but I definitely was so super looking forward to the movie, and now you can't think about it without those thoughts in the back of your head. Especially, and we will get into it, especially after the week Warner Brothers Discovery has had. It just doesn't feel right to spearhead this film's campaign. It just doesn't feel right to go ahead with this movie, considering everything that is happening with Ezra in the background.
Yeah, whether they Ezra does get the help that they need and they go with the first scenario, which is they release the movie, or whether they decide to have limited press for the movie, either way, this is all still going to be at the forefront of this movie and the promotion of it. Like, you can't divorce what everyone's been saying on Twitter from this film's release. It's just like there's not really a great scenario for it.
No, and part of me is pull it and just take the loss. People will go see the movie. Obviously they will. But at this point, I feel like it's also an image concern for Warner Brothers Discovery. Like it sets a precedence for what they'll be okay with when it comes to their stars, depending on, I guess, the budget of the movie. I mean, I know the second option is that like Ezra doesn't get help. And so they just like go forward with what they need to go forward with, and Ezra won't be a part of any of the like major marketing or publicity. But the point still stands, whether Ezra is part of promoting the movie, whether they're not part of promoting the movie, the press are going to want to ask questions about it. And even if you say like you bar that question, it's going to come up in every article. Every single article that comes out about the press that they're doing, I'm sure it'll come up in all the reviews. Like it's a tainted film at this point.
I know, and I hate to say it, I feel like that number 2 scenario is the most likely one that'll happen. And I don't necessarily mean whether Ezra gets help or not. I just feel like regardless of whether that happens, Warner Brothers will push ahead with the movie, but just leave Ezra out of the marketing, and they'll go all in on Michael Keaton's Batman, Ben Affleck's cameo appearance as Batman, Sasha Calle's Supergirl, just to try to draw attention away from it. Of course, you can't have the Flash on the movie or the Flash movie posters without the Flash on it. That'll be something, but they'll just not put the names on it. I hate to say it, but I don't see, and I know we'll get to it with the third situation, but I just don't see them scrapping this movie, considering how closely they've been standing by it particularly over the last week.
Yeah, because with the third scenario of just pulling it, which would be unprecedented. That's $200 million is nothing to sniff at. This is still a company that got rid of a $90 million movie, but like adding more money to that, like another loss. This one they wouldn't be able to write off on taxes, presumably. And one they apparently believe in, which that based on what we saw of the trailer, it looks like it's going to be a fantastic film. I have no doubt that it's going to be one of the best films that DC has put out. I don't think it's going to be a train wreck. It looked very exciting. Anything having to do with Flashpoint when it comes to Barry Allen's story is always exciting. It's just, I wish there was not but attached to like every time we talk about the Flash. Oh, the Flash is going to be amazing, but the Ezra situation. Oh, the Flash is going to be amazing, but how do we move forward with Barry Allen's story in the DCEU? Will we be moving forward with Barry Allen's story in the DCEU? Clearly not with Ezra attached. I just don't see, even if Ezra does get help, I don't see how they continue to play that character. I feel like that should not be in the equation. But I'm not the one making like the decisions, so.
Mm-hmm. It's an unfortunate situation for a movie they were relying so heavily on, because not to get into the issues with the DCU, we have plenty of time for that later, but not to get into the issues with it right now. The DCEU was flawed to begin with, and the Flash is an easy character to reboot all that. You have him go back in time, you have him alter the timeline, but how do you alter the Flash? That's the situation they're going to have to ask going forward. And if all the characters for it to happen with, this is possibly the most difficult one, because they've put all their eggs in that Flash basket, and now they're going to have to ask some serious questions either before or definitely after this movie comes out about where does that leave the character to go forward. And I agree, it can't be with Ezra in the role.
It's such a complicated situation. I just hope for the fans that they get something, because it seems like the fans are the ones that keep losing out on this whole situation. And I don't know, it's a really tough, complex situation that I don't think we ever expected to be in with this big of a movie.
No, and that feels like it's just a situation with Warner Brothers Discovery in general. Everything is just up in the air. Like, I know we went through the whole culling of the CW, but did not expect that to extend to the DC universe as a whole. And we are now like sitting here wondering about which projects are moved forward, which ones won't. I mean, everything has buzz. I'm going to be honest, I'm still hurt about Batgirl, mainly because I just don't see what was the point. Like, I know people were like, oh, it's because it was bad. And Zaslav did say, it wasn't about the performances. It was really just because we're moving for theatrical releases. And then, you hop on the call And it was about it was about the quality of the movie, which, by the way, there was a piece of the script that was going around and people were like, what is with the Batten time thing? And I was like, just let it be fun. Can y'all just please let things be
Wait, they
fun?
said batten time?
Oh yes.
Like
Hmm.
it's batten time?
So apparently it's a catchphrase, but see, it's an out of context piece of the script. So
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
no idea how she says it or if it's sarcastic, but someone was asking her, what is with that? And you don't get her reply, I don't think.
I mean, like, there's a place for these campy movies. We've talked about this. Like, just we need more fun movies that are not particularly good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
More mediocre movies is what I say.
Yes, give us some threes. Everything can't be a five. Threes or fours are excellent too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, guys, you won't find a bigger DC fan than me. So when I tell you this last week has been a week, it's been a week. It's Tuesday night, everything just totally fell apart. I remember the rumors about Batgirl came out, and then an hour or two later, it turned out it was where they weren't rumors. It was actually Warner Brothers decided to can a $90 million movie. And you're like, why did they do that? And the original report said, was it because its budget ballooned past 75 million, which is what they'd set aside for it. And they decided they're not going to spend 90 million on this movie to get it right. Then there were the reports that they didn't want to do theatrical or they wanted to do theatrical releases. And this film wasn't structured like a big, larger than life theatrical movie. It was very much a television movie, which is why it was done for streaming and it wouldn't have worked. That doesn't mean people wouldn't have gone to see it. But and then there's now the reports that it was due to terrible audience reviews from audience screenings. And you're like, none of those justify canning a $90 million movie that you hired actors to do. It could have been big breaks for certain actors. It was big, huge returns to mainstream for other actors. And it could have been just a lot of fun in a very complex and convoluted universe. But they were like, yeah, we don't believe in that. And we will get into what it means for DC and we will get into what it means for the future. But the one thing that really bugs me is that a huge company like Warner Brothers Discovery that has access to these huge, larger than life characters on a huge, larger than life streaming service believes that the future of film is theatrical releases. No, the present of film is still very much theatrical releases, and that might be the future, but streaming movies are part of that. And all you have to do is look at Disney and what they accomplished with Prey this last week. The Predator franchise has been dying on the big screen, and they single-handedly managed to revive it via Prey, which now in 3 or 4 days became the most watched premiere on Hulu ever across film and television in its first 3 days. Like, does that not suggest that larger than life movie franchises do have a place on streaming going forward? Don't tell me Batgirl wouldn't have worked on HBO Max. It absolutely would have.
At the time we talk about Warner Brothers Discovery, it's just a big old sigh. Because it just feels like we're circling back to old models. And for what reason? Like, you can have theatrical releases and you can have streaming movies. They each have their place. Like, I just don't see why DC can't branch as they've always branched. Like, we've got the big movies in theaters. We could do the streaming movies on HBO Max, have a little bit of fun with those. Like in the series too. I'm disappointed that like Batgirl is gone. I was really disappointed when the Wonder Twins didn't even get to like get off the ground. We got the announcement for leads, and what was it, a few weeks later? They were like, oh no, never mind, we're not moving forward with that one. And that was about budget too. It just really seems like they don't want to pay into their streaming movies past a certain amount, and especially not for DC projects.
I know it's like they've set aside DC for big screen, and I get it, it works, whatever, go with it, but it doesn't mean you can't have success on the small screen, and everything doesn't have to be a TV show. Yes, I do agree Batgirl would probably have worked better as a TV show, and that probably would have saved it from the axe. But like, again, look at Prey. No one says there's no future in streaming big budget franchises, and I think HBO Max was the perfect place for Batgirl. I was so excited for it. And I think the Wonder Twins would have been a success. They're not as mainstream as Batgirl. So because the movie hadn't started yet, I can understand that a different leadership might think this might not be the success the previous leadership was hoping it would be. But Batgirl was done. Batgirl was ready. Batgirl should have been released this year or next year.
I guess I didn't realize that the goalpost for like quality movie releases in theaters had moved. I don't understand what they mean, because like we grew up in an era where the comic book movies weren't at the level they are now with Marvel. So like we should still have space for the movies that aren't as big as like the Multiverse of Madness or whatever that one was. It just doesn't make sense to me. And there could still be a market for it to have like a limited release in theaters or something, and then drop it on HBO Max. I know there's so much more like behind the scenes that it's not as easy as like just release it. But like I don't understand. Why does every movie that's released in theaters have to be like big and grand? Like we can release a 2004 Catwoman in theaters in 2022. Like nothing makes sense to me, guys.
It feels a bit like ego. It feels like because DC has so much, like, it's iconic. So they want all the films to be iconic, and they're therefore to have like a whole bunch of praise, which this might be a controversial opinion. It may not even be true, but it feels like under this leadership, like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man probably wouldn't have even gone forward. Even though like this big, like when you think about comic book movies, in line with what we grew up with and what is today, where they are today, it wouldn't have survived. But it was this huge, massive success. And I just feel like, not to say that Batgirl would have reached to that heights, we don't know because we didn't see it. But could you imagine if they had like their Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man, and Batgirl, and they just nixed it and she's never coming out because taxes?
Yeah, I'm thinking too about all those Batman movies from like, was it the 90s? Michael probably knows better than I do. Like, those are the George Clooney ones.
Yeah.
Weren't those like low-key stinkers?
Oh, you've opened the can of worms there. You've opened the can of worms there.
No offense.
Yes, the classic Burton/Schumacher franchise of the 80s and the 90s. The first two movies were masterpieces. The third one was okay. And then there was that infamous George Clooney Batman at Robin in 1997. And look, this is the same company that released that. I know it's a new leadership. And yes, it was a bit of a critical and financial flop. But like, take swings, miss swings, go back to the drawing board and try again. If Batgirl was not being released in theaters, and I still think it would have been successful if it was, it wouldn't have flopped on HBO Max. It would not have failed on HBO Max. So why didn't they release it? I just feel like this company is, because the previous leadership made so many mistakes, this company is afraid to take any risks, and it's showing. They've canned, or they're thinking about canning, a lot of really interesting out of the box DC properties and going ahead with the bland, predictable leaders as usual. Not that I don't love my bland, predictable leaders, but like when they had hosted that call, the DC franchise image was just the Batman logo, the Superman logo, and the Wonder Woman logo. And it's like, after all these intriguing new ideas for DC to branch out, are we just going back to the original Trinity again? Where's the fun in that? Keep Wonder Woman. The movies are so enjoyable. The first one was a masterpiece. Bring Superman back and get it right. Keep Michael Keaton's Batman. That's not up for debate. But other than that, give us new stories. Like, and I know they're going ahead with some of the ones that have already been made, but it just feels like we're going back to basics. And I know that maybe is how they need to restart the franchise, but it doesn't mean you have to can the interesting and original ideas you had at the same time.
No, and this is a bit of a detour, but I do have a question. Like, if we're going to do the Trinity, how many Batmans are we going to have? Because we already have Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves' Batman. And then like they have Batfleck back. And then there's Michael Keaton. I know Robert isn't in the DCEU, well, right now. I don't know what they're going to do going forward. They need to leave him out of the DCU, let Matt Reeves do his thing. But if that's the case, so like we can't have multiple of these heroes on TV show and on movies, but it's fine to have three of them in the movie universe. I mean,
right too. George, we need you. Crisis of Infinite Batman.
Everybody played Batman, but George Clooney played George Clooney in a Batman mask. Yes, this is the big issue. This is the same company that told the CW they're never allowed to have Batman on TV because people would get confused about having Batman on TV and Batman in the DCEU or whatever it was they were trying to do at the time. And yet they're like, let's have three Batmans on the big screen. People won't get confused about that. I think they've started to realize through the Dark Knight trilogy and now the Batman, in that Batman works best alone. Yes, Batman can exist in these big, larger than life comics. Some of the best comic book stories involving Batman were the supernatural ones, like Crisis on Infinite Earths and everything like that. But the truth is, Batman is at its best when it's realistic, when it's stripped down, when it's dark, and when it's like a detective story. And you can't do that in the same universe that Superman's out there fighting Doomsday or Wonder Woman's fighting Amazonian gods. So I think they realized somewhere along the line that they take Batman back out of that world and give him a separate movie. But that creates an offshoot. According to the powers that be, the Batman is set on Earth 2 of the DCEU. Yes, we're doing multiverse again. So that's why it's separate and more realistic. Meanwhile, Ben Affleck is our DCEU Batman, but he doesn't want to do it anymore. So they had to come up. This is where the Flash comes in. Flashpoint will see Barry Allen go back in time, save his mom, and when he returns to the future, everything will be different. And instead of having the mid-40s aged murderous Batman that Ben Affleck was, we now have the 60 to 70-year-old retired Batman, angry at the world, played by Michael Keaton, who will then come out of retirement to help the Flash get back to his timeline. But that's the theory. Now we have 3 Batman. Which one is canon? I think before the merger, Michael Keaton will be canon going forward. We know he was supposed to return in Batgirl, and I think there were rumors that he would play kind of like a Nick Fury kind of role going forward, and that he would unite these heroes or train the next generation of the Bat family, which sounds brilliant. It lets them keep the Batman franchise separate, have a fully blown Batman and Robert Pattinson, while also keeping the Batman character in the DCEU without having him actually be Batman. It works. It's like having their cake and eating it. It will get confusing, but like if they're going to do that, they're going to take so many risks as far as Batman is concerned. And let's not forget, we also have Joker out there doing its own thing in its own separate universe. So it's a bit of a mess. But if they're taking all these risks with all these Batman characters, why couldn't Batgirl have been dealt the same grace? Why can't they do that with some of the more outside the box heroes that either their movies are going to be canned or they've slowed down production on? Why is it always the same heroes are allowed this leniency, and the newer or the younger or the more outside the box heroes, as I said, aren't? That's not a DCEU that takes risks, and that's not a DCEU that's very promising. And it sounds like a DCEU that's going to make the same mistakes as its predecessor.
Can I just throw out a hot take?
Yes, please.
From the outside looking in. Like, how is this supposed to be accessible to someone like me who doesn't know all of that and just wants to watch a fun Batman movie? Like, far be it for me to complain, but we have more Batmans than Spider-Man. Am I wrong in thinking, like, I have no entryway into this universe because there's like 16 Batmans. And I don't know who's playing what and who's connected to who and what Ben Affleck's doing.
Don't have to give away any spoilers.
And there's like 1,000 Jokers. Just kind of throw that out.
This is very true. The Joker has turned into Oscar material. Any actor will sign up to it just so they can win an Oscar, because what they can do with that character is just incredible. But like, unfortunately, that creates too many offshoots. Y'all have both seen Spider-Man No Way Home, am I right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I have not.
Oh, I have.
Okay, right. Well, there's multiple Spider-Men in this universe or whatnot. The difference with the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that they decided to make all 3 of them canon, but in their own universes. DC doesn't do anything that normal. DC tries to confuse people. So we have 3 Batmen at the moment. One of them is the mainstream Batman, but he doesn't exist in the mainstream DCEU. That's Robert Pattinson. We have Ben Affleck, who's a relic from the old mainstream timeline, which is the former DCEU. And then we have Michael Keaton from the original Batman 1989 / Batman Returns timeline of the 90s. And now he's going to be suddenly made canon by The Flash. So a completely separate Batman doesn't just exist in his own separate universe like normal people would do. No, he exists now in the DCEU after The Flash. It's all very confusing. And it would be even less confusing if Batgirl was allowed to go ahead, but because that would add more context as to why is Michael Keaton here? Why is he still suited up at 70 years old? And
he's 70?
Yes, he is. Early 70s.
Not the point, but whoa.
And the director, heartbreaking. Last Friday, the director released an image from set of the movie with them standing in between Leslie Grace's Batgirl and Michael Keaton's Batman. And it was the first proper shot we've seen of Michael Keaton suited up in the outfit. It's a slightly modified version of the one he wore in the Batman Returns. And it looks exactly the same. Oh, what could have been? I know we'll see it in The Flash, but I'm deathly terrified that they're now going to, Warner Brothers Discovery is now, instead of making Michael Keaton the future of the Batmans in the DCEU, they're going to make The Flash an island, a separate timeline, and then have it all fixed up by the end of it so that no more Michael Keaton. We don't want that. We need more Michael Keaton. I want more Michael Keaton, and Batgirl deserves to go ahead just for Michael Keaton. No, I'm joking. But
I think Michael wants Michael Keaton back.
What gave you that idea? Yeah, I'm just I would not be doing this if it weren't for the Michael Keaton Batman movies, and I want more Michael Keaton. And that's a very selfish thing to say because there's so much more at stake with Batgirl than just Michael Keaton. But so I'm well aware of that. But I just wanted to give my perspective of it, of how much it meant to see Michael Keaton in another Batman movie. I'm going to stop saying the words Michael Keaton now. But Batgirl had so much going for it. And I'm so sick of the amount of people tweeting me saying the audience deserved better, right? And I'm like, how the heck would you know you didn't see the movie? So many people are quick to judge based on what one rumor said. And let's be honest, regardless of what the actual reason is, the underlining point here is that Warner Brothers Discovery did not believe in this movie when so many other people did. And that is not good enough because the powers that be, we've seen how many times the companies get involved in the correct director's vision. Not on the company that making the movie. They're not even the company that made the movie. It was the old Warner Brothers. They said they don't believe in the movie, but the director believed in the movie. The cast believed in the movie. The fans believed in the movie. When was that not good enough? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And again, it comes back to taxes. That's the thing that's like really grating. It's like we don't believe in the movie, which I'm sure they don't, but also you wanted to write it off. Like, I just don't. How does that create a safe environment for creatives when it seems like you've set up a precedence where if there is an ability to write something down on taxes, or there's a loophole that you can work through that will benefit the company in such a way that it doesn't matter, the art doesn't matter, that does not produce an environment that creatives are excited about. That they like, unless of course you're going to be a part of one of the Trinity's projects, then that movie is going to go forward. They will bend over backwards. They will tie themselves in knots. Legal will get on the horn and tell them what they can and cannot do, what's safe to do. But if you are anything else, then like everyone hold tight to their seats. I mean, make sure you got your contracts in order. And so that like I remember there was a tweet where someone was talking about that, where they said to creatives, get your contracts in order so that there's clauses in there that if they, I'm assuming if they default on you for whatever, or they pull you, there's at least financial compensation of some kind, or like you can do something about it. I'm assuming that contracts are going to start changing in Hollywood thanks to this move. But I do wonder, Michael, like you said, they're not being quite risky or innovative, or at least it doesn't seem like it. So like what's safe? And what should we be worried about?
There were so many worries and concerns after this news came out. And even now, a week on, my mind's still very jumbled because, first of all, let's be honest, the DCEU was a very messy landscape to begin with. Every time they announced a project, I was like, yay, where does this fit in? That was the underlining point of DC movies. And I think as soon as the Batgirl announcement was made, the two that people started to worry about was Black Canary, the HBO Max movie starring Journey Smollett that would have been a sequel to Birds of Prey, and Blue Beetle, the former HBO Max movie, which has now been moved up to a theatrical release, which may have just saved its life. They were the two that people were most worried about. But in the last few days, we have got confirmation that Black Canary is still going ahead at HBO Max, which I'm very happy about. You know how much I love the Black Canary. And Blue Beetle is still, which thankfully, because Blue Beetle is either in production or in post-production, I can't quite remember. Again, it is going ahead, which again, great news. So these two innovative properties that people were excited about and then suddenly became worried about are both going ahead. That's the good news. However, it seems like every piece of good news with DC comes at a cost. The projects now, according to a recent report from Hollywood Reporter, the projects that are now at risk is the Supergirl movie starring Sasha Calle. While it was never officially greenlit, I don't think, it's been in early development for some time. And it was obviously supposed to be a sequel to The Flash. Then the Green Lantern Corps movie, which again, I'm not heartbroken about because that movie has been in development for a very long time. And now we know we have a Green Lantern HBO Max series coming. So it would get very confusing with the two of them. But again, that's DC in a nutshell. The other ones are Static Shock. I'm disappointed about that. Apparently Static Shock is production is stalled on it as well. And there was, because let's be honest, everyone adored the animated series of Static Shock. Everyone loves the comic books. And that again would have been another outside the box. He's not one of the like automatic DC heroes you think of, but he is an incredibly popular one. So everyone loved the idea of seeing a movie with Static Shock. And then the other one, the somewhat divisive Superman movie from J.J. Abrams and Ta-Nehisi Coates that would have been dealt with a Black Clark Kent. Everyone thought an incredible step forward for representation, but a lot of people were annoyed with the fact of why did we have to go with a Black Clark Kent when there is a Black Superman in the comics? Could we not have used him instead? So much so that Michael B. Jordan is developing a HBO Max series focused on that Superman. Val Zod is his name. So it sounds like maybe because of the feedback, Warner Brothers is deciding to go with the Michael B. Jordan property because fans actually want that one, and maybe moving back on the Ta-Nehisi Coates Superman project, which again, this is a world where we can have both. But again, it seems Warner Brothers is being very selective about what they pick. And there have been a lot of rumors that they want to bring Henry Cavill's Superman back as the mainstream Superman of the DCEU. So could that be a reason why the Superman movie stalled production? Because of all the projects to get stalled production, a Superman movie is a very, very strange one. But aside from that, you look at all four of those projects, they're what we could consider outside the box projects. And unfortunately, yet again, Warner Brothers Discovery seems to have lost interest in producing outside the box projects.
Weird to me because it feels like just like being aware of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the thing that makes it really successful is that they started out with their core group and then they've branched out and it's been super successful. And it just seems like they can't get off the DC universe, can't get off the ground. Like, I don't even know who these people are, but it would be interesting to see them and not see like Superman and Batman rehash for the 15th time in my lifetime. Was that too salty?
No.
I'm just like,
Tell it like it is.
Like, who is Blue Beetle? I don't know who he is or she, and I want to know who they are.
That's it. Blue Beetle is one of the most popular younger DC characters, and my knowledge is not as up to date as it should be because I haven't watched Young Justice in a very long time. But
Are they blue and a beetle?
The outfit is a blue beetle, yes. It's a giant blue beetle. The character ends up coming across an ancient scarab, which then I believe latches itself onto the back of his neck and forms like a blue-like armor around him.
That's scary.
And even though it is kind of scary, but the fact is they're one of the most fun superheroes in DC Comics. And the Scarab is like a consciousness in their head, so it tells the user what to do, and the user has to then disagree with it. It's going to make for a great movie, and I can't wait to see it. Which is why, in my heart, I am so happy that it's one of the projects going forward. I hate that we're at a stage where it feels like maybe we have to pick and choose, and that this time an outside the box project like Blue Beetle won out. But it also feels like an awful lot of outside the box projects like the Supergirl movie. You know how much I love Supergirl. Why do we have to lose that? Now, I'm not saying it's gone. It's not gone yet. But again, it just feels like Warner Brothers has lost interest in a lot of the good stuff that the previous creative team got right. So why do we have to pick and choose? When you're working with a franchise this big, you should not have to pick and choose. Marvel does not. Marvel's like, let's introduce them to the MCU. 2 years later, they've introduced them, their family, their cousins, everyone into the MCU, and everyone loves them. Why has DC not been able to do that yet?
I think it is because they just don't have everyone talks about how they don't have their Feige. And it's like, I don't necessarily know if they need a Kevin Feige. They just need a game plan that is feasible. I feel like every time they're like, we have a plan, we know what we're doing. And then you look at the plan, it's like, it's too grandiose. Mm-hmm. Like you want to do like 5 different big budget movies before we get to the group movie, which it already feels like it's going to be a mess because you didn't seed these people into the other movies from the previous ones. So it's like, I feel like just don't worry about solo movies to then get you to the big group movie, or do a big group movie with people we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't need the Trinity to try once again to be the Justice League. Like, put the Justice League a decade from now, I guess. I don't know. I know like big DC fans don't want that, but like they need to get their stuff together when it comes to everything else. So why don't we just have separate solo movies and y'all can do your big Justice League movie way down the road after you've figured everything out?
And I think that's where they failed the first time, and unfortunately, every other project is now paying for it. I'm was a bit of a latecomer to the Marvel universe. I'd seen so many of the movies, but I hadn't seen them in order in 2016. I didn't know what they were building towards, but even I knew that they started with the solo projects and then built your way up to the Avengers. And after the Avengers was a huge global success, there was absolutely no going back. DC tried to fast track that because they had a good foundation in Man of Steel, but they didn't do a solo Batman movie. And even though they did do a solo Wonder Woman movie, they decided to introduce her first in Batman versus Superman, which also had the tall task of introducing Ben Affleck's Batman to the world. It was just a whole mess. So by the time Justice League came around, Justice League came out after Wonder Woman, by the way, which was a masterpiece, which was a critical and financial success. And even that couldn't save Justice League, which came out 6-7 months later, and it was a flop. Yes, 600,000 is nothing. Sorry, 600 million is nothing to be sneezed at. But the movie lost money. That was not what they needed for their big. This was their big Avengers moment, and the movie lost money. And I think that's what ultimately forced them to go back to the drawing board and think we need to work on this. So they've started doing solo movies since. But even at that, those solo movies haven't had a direction. And everyone was like, Marvel build their universe, DC do their standalones. We can respect that. But now this new creative team that have come in, the Warner Brothers Discovery team, want to build a shared universe in the exact same way that Marvel did. So we're back to building towards an end game. We're back to bringing these heroes all together. The problem is we have a lot of heroes with sidekicks whose projects have now been cancelled. Meanwhile, we have 3 Batman. Which one's it going to be? So I think they're trying to do a lot of spring cleaning, and a lot of projects maybe have died because of that. But they shouldn't, because what DC did get it right towards the end of its run. Now Warner Brothers Discovery's DC wants to go back to the beginning of building a shared universe again. And those two ideas are not going to blend well together. And it could create a heck of a lot more mess before we get anything linear, before we get anything streamlined. And like, it's a tough time to be a DC fan.
It's like that meme with all the strings and papers. Like they swear they understand, they found the thread of the story. And it's like, you did not. We know you did not. We're all just going to suffer until you find it. Solo movies would have been the way to go. I think DC didn't need a shared universe. They can't somehow do it. So like, just let everybody have fun in their own little pockets. That's not going to happen, but I wish that was what they were going to be doing, because now, like, viewers like you, Reed, who are like, so which movies do I watch and which ones do I don't? And then you have like big fans like Michael, who's like, well, it's a complicated question. I can, like,
and then I'm like,
make your guide.
JK. And I'm like, JK, retract the question.
Yeah.
Y'all are coming to me for knowledge and I cannot give it to you.
I mean, you're trying your best with what you got, but they're not really helping out too much.
No, they front loaded too many great movies. I know Reed is a big fan of the Suicide Squad decisions.
I love those movies.
Oh, absolutely. Which one do you watch first? Well, it's the one without the word "the" in it. I don't know. It's been a mess. It started finding its way out of that mess, and it's going to get a lot messier again. And I mean, we can sit back and watch the fireworks, because I don't know what they're doing.
I don't know. But you know what's funny? That like DC is messier than the CW in a year when the CW has been at its messiest since it even like came to life as a network. Let's skip to some fun messiness with Dynasty.
Ooh, finally it's back. This most recent episode, I think it was season 5, episode 19. 19. It was a really bizarre episode, and I know I don't ever criticize the show too much because I love it. I didn't hate the episode. It was just a really weird episode to see in the run up to the series finale. Like we only have 3 more episodes now, and we got this weird episode where there was a 6-month time jump that was introduced in dialogue. Like Fallon was like, "It's been 6 months," and I was like, "It's been 6 months." And then there's this whole sequence where Liam is having a lot of anxiety about writing his second book after his first was a huge success and they made a movie out of it. So from where we saw him 6 months ago, he still has not written a single word and his deadline's coming up. So I don't know what Liam's been doing for 6 months, but boy, you better hurry up. He had like a nightmare dream sequence, and there was like a whole act of the episode was living inside of his nightmare. It went like, I want to say like full tilt horror. It was creepy, and he was like in the hotel. I think it's La Mirage. I get the hotel mixed up with the one with Veronica's nightclub in Riverdale. But he was like dreaming he was like being chased throughout this the hotel, and Blake was in it as like a bartender, and then Adam was in it as like this creepy bellhop, and then Amanda was in it as a maid. He was just really going through it in this nightmare, and then he finally faces the hooded figure that was like chasing him, and it was himself. And I have to give Adam Huber props because he had so much fun with this, and you could tell that he doesn't get a chance to really play that much with Liam. He's just like Mr. Fallon Carrington, and he has good storylines, but he never really gets to do as much as the other characters do. And this episode was just so weird, but it worked. And then right off the tails of that, it's just a normal episode of Dynasty. Like Adam is spiking Fallon Surrogate's tea, a whole mess. And then in the end, Culhane finally gets the girl, and there's just a Babyface song. And I'm like, I wouldn't have imagined that the same episode where there's a whole horror sequence would have a Babyface song in it. I don't remember which one it is. I wish I remembered. It was cute. It was an interesting episode, even if it was a little out there. And they've had some out there episodes. Like Michael, you've seen The Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah.
One, the Fallon's gas leak musical episode.
Oh yes.
And the black and white stuff. Like, but this one was just like, it came out of nowhere. There's just a whole act that was a horror movie out of nowhere.
I love that they went experimental. Like, this last episode, we're gonna do something fun and something different. Here's a whole horror section.
Yeah, this season's kept it pretty straight, I want to say. Like they haven't done too many experimental things like they have in the past, but it was interesting to see in the lead up. I think we have 3 episodes left, and I don't know. I'm excited to see where they go in the final 3, but we have to wait till September.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure after the episode on August 12th, the final 3 will be on in September.
So that's how we're filling the September schedule then, until we get to October. I mean, you know what? That's a smart. Well, not for Dynasty fans. I know y'all would just want to like get the finished product of your season. But as far as the schedule goes, I like that decision for the CW.
We have some relics from the old era still left over.
I know. Dynasty's the last one. I mean, I love it for Dynasty that they're the last of the bunch to air their finale.
Sit on the throne one more time before we again crown new people, or attempt to crown new people. Can it be a crown if it's all acquisition? No. There's the Winchesters. There's that.
Yeah. Do they deserve the crown?
Independence. Oh, no, not yet. We'll see. I mean, I'm team you have to get a full season under you before anyone could be declaring you the best thing the CW has ever done. Yes, I'm talking directly to Superman and Lois fans who saw 2 episodes and immediately were like, it's the best Arrowverse show ever. Nothing compares. And I'm just like, please chill. We love Superman and Clark Kent too, and Lois Lane, but just not
the material.
Yes, exactly. All of the material. And we saw all of season 2. And, you know, we're struggling at the end, but that might have been CW's fault and not the writer's fault. So season 3 could go back to its quality that season 1 had. Not that season 2 was bad. It was great. Let me not say I'm slandering it. Like, it had its moments.
It was a journey.
Yes, exactly. It was a journey. Not like Riverdale season 6 was a journey. So not the same journey, a better journey.
That was a windy journey, a twistful journey.
It was. But you know what journey I am like excited about? And if it had to be, and this is the best thing the CW has ever done, which it's not, but I really do enjoy Nancy Drew. And if you were to like get my immediate feelings about Nancy Drew, but yeah, it's the best thing CW has done.
I agree with you. I think I feel like it's the last of like that era of the CW. It's the last one that feels like the network that we knew. Like it feels we're very much like maybe not even a new chapter, a different book.
Yeah, I like that description.
Yeah, but Nancy, episode 4, what a doozy.
Emotionally, yeah. I wasn't expecting so much to happen for a lot of the characters emotionally, which is saying something because I have seen this episode and I've got everything that happened in it like prior to me watching it. But I know we say this every podcast, but Kennedy is so good.
Oh yeah,
she's so good.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Kennedy, if you're watching / listening, we love you.
Yes.
Retweet. Oh my goodness, the scene at the grave. What a performance! Just incredible.
It just hit it out of the park. I remember when they had the line about how she hadn't been to the graveside yet, and I was like, oh, I don't remember how long it's been, but it's been a while since her mom passed. Has it been a year? I want to say it's almost been a year. And she hadn't been. I was like, oh, this is gonna pull up the heartstrings. And then when you have that moment with her dad, who she's still not like all the way on the right terms with, but their discussion, it took me out in the best possible way. It's just exactly what Nancy needed to experience before then talking to her mom.
And it's good to see that he's kind of trying a little bit more to be, because I know we've been, at least I have been kind of like raising my eyebrows at this man. Like, I don't believe a word he says. And then he, at that press conference with Ryan Hudson, he kind of like walks back on defending the family and was kind of like, JK, I think the results of the autopsy were inconclusive. And that's kind of what Nancy needed to feel like he believed in her. So we're getting those like little moments where he's taking her side on some things, which she needs. That's basically what she's been telling him. Like, I just need you to be here for me. And he's kind of chosen everything but her, because he's in fight or flight survival mode too, I would assume.
Yeah. And I feel like on that note, I think this episode's had the most character work we've seen so far. And that's could be considered quite surprising considering how the episode opened. I mean, can we talk about that supernatural intro? Like, right.
Oh my God. I had it on and I was putting laundry away. I jumped out of my skin when I saw, I don't remember what part it was, but when Nancy and Bess were like walking around and like everything was like shattering, I was like, was not expecting that as I was putting my socks away.
And they had their like the moment with the video, like with the footage from the camera, where they like really got to see. And then, if I remember correctly, isn't that it's Fritz's, and then you see Lucy, right?
Yeah.
And then
her laptop.
Yeah, like it's the laptop, it's the TV. At least he's everywhere. I think at this point, by episode 4, is like, yeah, this is a supernatural show. Like these are ghosts. This is what's happening. They do it so well. It's so eerie. I love the explanation. I know we're hopping all over the place, but I love George's mom and her explanation of how like ghosts work. And then it really brings you into, it takes a really serious thing, like what Lucy's doing to the Drews. It makes it silly enough where like it feeds you the information you need without it being like too much. And I love that. And I loved when she said, and this is the most important thing, refill my glass.
I love George's reaction. She's like, oh, okay, we're done.
No, I agree. I feel like sometimes shows like that start very seriously and like pushed back against the idea of whether there is supernatural out there. Sometimes they need a character like that just to bridge the gap and like be the gate between both worlds, because like this woman fully believed in ghosts because she had her own experiences with them and she was gifted, so that made it easier for us to buy then the rest of the characters suddenly believing and buying into it as well. But I really like Nancy's explanation for why she refused to believe in ghosts, and it was that she was heartbroken that her mother never came to her. And why didn't you come for me, is what she said to her at the grave. And I just, that really hit me, because the show, Nancy's been very conflicting kind of character, in that yes, she's the protagonist, and yes, you root for her, but she's obviously had some qualities, and that she's quick to judge people, and there's a lot of unresolved conflict between her and her father. And I feel like that one explanation, which was, let's be honest, on paper, an explanation as to why ghosts exist in this world and how we can buy into it. I just thought that explanation for such a supernatural thing was so grounded and so real. And obviously Kennedy's performance as well was just out of this world, but just that really resonated with me. I thought that was really, really, really nice, and a really authentic way to open the doors to the supernatural world going forward.
And it ties into her grief, which she's really just like pushed all the way down and not really expressed too much, and it's something that she needed to let out. Um, so it was really a great way to tie in like the supernatural with like Nancy finally breaking herself open and communicating with that grief that she's kind of ignored for survival.
I think, and this is going to be a weird comment, because everybody's human, but it just they really write the characters with a lot of humanity. Like there's a lot of acknowledgement of mistakes and what you can do better, and how you don't always have the answers. I loved the part when she tells her dad he made the mistake of not telling her, right? But he was trying to honor what his wife asked him to do. But it put Nancy in a situation where she is dancing under the fairy lights at school, and her mom is passing. And so there was no good choice for him. Do you go with what her mom wanted, or did you respect that your child would have wanted to be there? It was a lot in such short scenes, so impactful. And I love that this show does take, we pause with the mystery enough to let them delve into their vulnerability, let them acknowledge the mistakes they've made, or that was it a mistake or was it a choice? I had a hard choice to make, and I made this choice based on what your mom asked me to do. And can you accept that? Can you not accept that? Or maybe don't even accept it. It's just what happened. So we have to move forward.
That dynamic is one of the most interesting on the show. I know we don't know an awful lot about her father yet. And even now that he's done the right thing and pushing back against the Hudsons, there's still that mystery as in why did he have the bloody dress in his attic? There's still an awful lot of unresolved questions about that, and I'm sure we'll find it out as we go on. But just the dynamic between him and Nancy, there is so much conflict, but also heartache. And this episode, you really saw that Nancy's not particularly. It's not just against him. Yes, he's done an awful lot in these last 3 episodes to come into direct conflict with her, but it's deeper. It goes deeper than that. She finds it hard to forgive him because he didn't tell her the truth about her mom. But at the same time, you can also understand his perspective. As you said, Sabrina, he was put in an awful, impossible predicament at that time. But yet, on the other hand, you can also totally understand why Nancy feels the way that she does. I just feel like in a show just mired in such supernatural depths from start through finish, that's very real. And that was my favorite part of the episode. That scene between the two of them was magnificent.
In this episode too, for me, had a lot of fun and lighthearted moments too, to balance it out. Nothing was forced. It all came up naturally to me. Tiffany's sister coming in and just being way over the top with her sunglasses and her Carly Rae Jepsen 2011 bangs. She gives Ace the fish record in a box of Gushers, which tells us a lot about Ace. Him and those puppy dog eyes, just he's a little kid with his Gushers. It was really funny. And even George's mom too. I thought there was a lot of fun moments that they're not forced. I think we talked separately about some of these superhero movies that try to force in humor in the dialogue. And it's this just comes up very naturally for this show. It's not usually Nancy that gets the comic relief, but like it happens around her to balance it out. But she had it in her home with Bess. I think Bess is really a funny character, whether she
Definitely.
intends to be funny or not. Like when they're like yelling at her about stealing the ring, and she's like, I like shiny things.
I'm like, wow, that's the story you're going with.
Because she's like, they calm me, and I was like, oh.
And it's the funny thing is like they're like, I don't know if we believe her, and it's like she's so genuine. Like that part of her is so, she may be lying to them about who she is, but like that's genuinely who she, like she would, why would she that's who she is. She loves diamond rings, and she's, of course, if she sees one, she's going to pick it up. It was just a really funny moment to me. But we did get a lot of answers about Bess, which I appreciated.
I like that this episode was, of course, it put we learned more about the two friends together in this episode. I mean, Bess and Ace. I like that their storylines, though they didn't necessarily, what am I looking for? They didn't necessarily connect, but we did get both of their reveals. I felt bad for Bess. I mean, I was already feeling bad for her because she was living out of her RV, and you could tell like something wasn't right there. But then learning about how she grew up and why she came to the States, and that accent switch to in the middle of the of her discussing, I was like, yes, perfection. Like y'all know what you're doing out here. And
Nancy didn't even flinch either.
No, she didn't. Nancy just rolled with it because she's Nancy Drew, and like, of course, I already figured out most things.
In her head, she was like,
accent.
Check.
Yes. I really want to see, I want to see Bess interact with the Marvins. Like it's not really important to me whether or not she is a part of that family. It's important to me that she gets the answers to that and how it's done. And like, please go talk to the woman you think is your grandma. I'm assuming she thinks that's her grandmother. I would love to see how that conversation goes.
Can I just say too that I really appreciated the slow burn reveal for Bess, because like since the pilot we've known like something's not right here. Like she's living in a van, she stole the ring, a whole mess of stuff, and we're just like, what's going on there? And like episode by episode we kind of like get to like her, but we're kind of like, something's still not right. And instead of this whole reveal of her, like her upbringing and her lying being just absolutely smushed into the pilot like so many shows do, they hit you over the head with the exposition, we're allowed to have this trickle out slowly but not feel like we missed out on anything.
Yeah, because the pilot episode and the second episode end up with all those like secret reveals that everyone wasn't being honest about who they are. So throwing Bess in direct line off the is she a murderer mystery ended up producing some fruitful results, because they did give us the answers, some of the answers we were looking for about her. And I think all in all, that's helped make her a more well-rounded character, because you could see she was putting on the accent and she was trying to be someone she wasn't or someone she longed to be. And I think that scene outside Mrs. Hudson's memorial between Nancy and Bess, where they had the argument and the accent switch and all of that, that was again another really powerful scene. And I think that was the one. It was interesting to see a character as polite, because she's always been so nice to Nancy, as a character as polite as Bess shoot down Nancy and give her a dose of this is how it is, because that made Nancy realize, hold on, I have my own unresolved conflict and I shouldn't have been so hard on her. And Nancy was very hard for Bess in that episode right out of the gate, as soon as she figured out that she'd stolen the ring. So that was I just thought that was a really nice dynamic throughout the whole episode. And I think it's ended up turning Bess into one of my favorite characters, because there's so much there, and you can't help but root for her, especially now knowing what we know. And can I just say, the streak lives. Last week I commented about how Nancy, 3 episodes in, she keeps getting caught. Well, she's now 0-4. 4 episodes in, she got caught at Bess's locker. Like, Nancy, you've got to get better at this, girl.
I'm going to watch the next episode and she's going to get caught again. I think it's just a part of her character. Maybe it's a season 1 thing. We're working up to get back to our level.
She needs to stay humble.
Yeah.
She needs these little moments.
Well, every episode they give one to her. She's like, oh, well. Or even the plan fell through today, not today, in the episode. Because, with the grief and not realizing how impactful Tiffany's burial was going to be, she kind of left George out there. And perhaps if Nancy had been around, George would have remembered the mirror. Because when she put what she needed to, when she put the ring back on Tiffany's finger, I said, George, I don't see a mirror in
I know. I was like, the mirror, stop closing it. Open the casket again.
And I love that we get what happens immediately at the end of the episode. By the way, great ending. There's a wonderful ending to that episode.
Another like terrifying moment of George getting possessed and then just like collapsing.
And then the voice, like the voiceover, and I love the shot that they had. It's just her and them surrounding with the claw, and she's on the ground, like Tiffany was on the ground.
I'm glad you brought up shots, because there were two specific shots in this episode that had me thinking, and not to get too like film class on you, but when Nancy was apologizing to Bess, that there was one shot, one singular shot where we see Nancy from above. We're looking down on her, and like that kind of shot is meant to like express vulnerability, and that's exactly what we got in that one scene, that one clip where she's apologizing. Because after that, they cut to Bess and they cut back to Nancy, and we're looking at her like normally, but we were looking at her from Bess's eye level, and I thought that was they use the camera a lot in the show, whereas some other shows, I think like Riverdale does a lot of interesting cinematography, but if that felt very intentional, it's that we see Nancy where we might have been annoyed at her that she was like overreacting and like really doubting her friend, but then we have that moment where we just like see her really vulnerably. And then I think it was at the end when George is walking in the parking lot, we see her from down below, and we're just supposed to like signify that she's powerful or something's not right. And that's exactly what was expressed in that scene. So I was like, oh my God, I learned something in film class in college.
No, I love that. I would always love to go to film studies class with you, Reed, like in the middle of the pod, because it does add an element to like what we're talking about. One of the things that Nancy Drew does it really well is they use all forms of storytelling, from the script to the shots, to the dialogue delivery, the choices that they make. It all paints a picture. I mean, since we're on shots, like when we're first introduced to Tiffany's sister, and it's that they mix the humor with giving you, allowing you to see who she is as a person. Nancy's just getting the newspaper, and here comes Miss Ma'am and snatches it right out of her hand, and then she walks away. So you get Nancy's reaction, and then you get her walking away. And I'm just like, that was a wonderful way to tell us who this woman is, because immediately it's like she does what she wants, and she doesn't let anyone get in her way, and she will screw people over. Like that just seemed like it's a part of her character. I don't know what's gonna happen with her playing that tape like that at the funeral. We shall see.
Yeah, that was daring. That was a Dynasty move if I've ever seen one. Should we do a quick ship watch though? How are you feeling with episode 4, Sabrina? I know you're in the trenches with Nick and Nancy, but there wasn't a lot of like movement, right?
No, but there's an ace shot. It's in the funeral. It pans from we're on Nancy. It pans up straight to Ace for no reason. Just like you're looking on her face. Someone said, I think Bess is one of the times Bess is talking to her, and I wish I would have paid attention to what the dialogue was, but it then goes straight to Ace, and I was like, y'all, like it's how storytelling works. Are you telling us something?
Probably, because the direction is like so intentional in the show. So I don't know. I didn't pick up on that one, but I just thought I'd throw out a ship watch real quick.
Yeah, I don't think is Nick really in this one, other than he's setting up his camera, and that's about
with the safe and everything.
Yeah,
there was no real like big relationship moments. That wasn't the purpose of the episode, but
no, but we did get a relationship reveal between Ace and Tiffany's sister, which I was like, okay, we'll bide our time. I know this is just for plot, but I am interested to see who he is around her and what she knows, because clearly she knows more than our Drew crew about him.
Oh, about Ace, I loved the scene where he pretended to be sick and George was like, I could die, you need to leave. And he's like, and he was just like, right on, and left.
Yes. And then he still tries to keep up the facade by the lockers when Bess is right there, and he hacks a lung up, and she just
The freaks her out.
Okay.
Like, I don't. Okay. Oh, I love him.
I know. I want to see his vinyl collection now. Since he got a vinyl record, we have to see one. Like, what does Ace's place look like?
Well,
like no one sent us photos.
It was Fish, right? So that tells us what kind of music he likes.
Yeah. So we're at rock. We're like chill rock though.
Like old school.
Now we're like, I'm sure there are like Ace playlists on by the Nancy Drew fans. So if anyone has any Ace playlists, send them our way. I would love to listen to what they think is on his Spotify.
Yeah, I'll get some gummies and listen to Ace's playlist.
Exactly. So we should move though to Tom Swift, who I have the flowers ready for the grave. Like the mentally, I don't actually have flowers, y'all. But I wish we didn't have to lay them, because if we're going to talk about one of the shows on the CW that had the most potential, I think it would be Tom Swift. It is not as tight as its parent show, Nancy Drew, but that's like okay. One, they had 10 episodes, and two, they're doing something a little different, and so they were ironing out the kinks. And in the finale, I don't know about you guys, but it felt more like a penultimate episode than it did a finale until we got to the end.
Yeah, I agree with that. The last act felt very like series finale, but the rest of it wasn't giving that.
Yeah, the first half of the episode was definitely one of those like standalone, like, I don't want to say battle episodes, but when people are like locked in the same place, they have to sort something out. And I know the pressure was on Tom, and I know it was a tense episode. I agree with the analogy that it very much felt like a penultimate episode. It succeeded in not being mistakes without a doubt, but it just, because they spent so long in the same place, it didn't quite scream finale until they got out of the building.
And then now we're left with a lot of questions. I mean, I guess we should talk more about the community building that they did. Once everyone working together to figure out what was happening was cool. One of the things though, I felt Tom underestimated, her name is escaping me, but Miss Big Bad. He underestimated Miss Big Bad like the whole time. And that confused me a little bit, because she seems like she's 15 steps ahead all the time. And she was really dastardly this episode. I mean, they're from poison handles to poisoning the food to trying to give people PTSD through the Swift site. I mean, it was horrifying.
Yeah, and once again, people were questioning Tom's integrity, and he even had to say, "I would not do this." And like, it sucks that he's had his integrity questioned. I feel like for most of the episodes, but like I know he's selfish, but like he wouldn't have done something like that. And I'm glad that he spoke up and defended himself.
Well, yeah, I wanted that man who was like, "You did this." I was like, "Sit down." In what way? like how? He's never done it. It'd be different if Tom had a slight history of experimenting on people and they didn't know, without consent or something. But that was not the case. So to assume that this man would poison everybody at this engineering complex, and Tom would have to stand up there and be like, "I would not do this. I would not do this to our people. Why would I poison y'all? Anyway, we need to work together." And then I did like that everyone did work together, and they figured out everything within 15. No, I guess in their time, it would probably be 15 minutes. For us, it was 2 minutes. But it was great that they there was an urgency there, because it was funny when he was mixing the cobalt with Lino, and he took the time to tell Lino exactly what steps he was taking. And I was like, "Sir, there are people throwing up and driving on the floor. I think we can wait for Lino's science lesson today."
Yeah, the scenery was rallying. Everyone was really, really good. I know the show had to do an awful lot of relying on dialogue, because that's just how they get the information across. But I did like the scenery rallied everyone, because we've never questioned his integrity as a good person, but he has had his flaws. And I think that was like a public space for him to showcase that in spite of his flaws, he's still good at heart. And I think that message really came across. And there are a lot of stuff we can take away from this as a series finale, even though half of it didn't feel like one. But that was an important point for I think that was an important point for what now we know was the final episode of the series to get across. And it was an incredible moment. I'm completely on board with it. I really, really liked that moment, even if some of the getting there wasn't exactly smooth sailing.
I think what I really liked about this episode was the intent behind a lot of the scenes. Of course, we had to get the reveal about Lorraine and her figuring out that, Claire has been mind controlling her. But one thing that Lorraine wanted from Tom the entire season was for him to step up. And in this episode, he truly did step up in the way that she wanted. I will say that there was one step up I didn't quite like of how it was seeded into the story, just because of all of there's so many high stakes in the finale. I did like the nuance behind the Grace and Mercy conversation. I did have an issue with how it's put into the storyline, considering what we had just learned in the previous episode.
Yeah, it's really complicated, right? Like that's the moment of the episode that sticks with me the most, because I've thought about it the most, and we've had some time removed from it so that I can kind of like wrap my head around it more, because in the moment I was not thrilled with it. I wasn't happy with it. I didn't appreciate the language and the messaging completely. But once I like took a step back and metabolized that, okay, this is the creator of the series wrote this in for a reason. He experienced this in his own life. So I have to have empathy for that. Like I completely get it. But like these conversations are some that, you know, a lot of people unfortunately have had in their own lives, in their own journeys. And I think it gets into tricky territory when we have a show kind of telling young people that it's important to like forgive people a little bit, like to give them grace even though you feel like they don't deserve it. And that's what his mom says, is that you give people grace who then they don't deserve that. It's for yourself, or whatever she was saying. That was there, it was a sweet intent behind it as his mother, but it's a big ask for me to see that and to have that put on to the viewers, as much of importance as it holds for Tom. Like that's part of his story, right? Is to come to terms with what he's experienced with his father, not just for his father, not just for his mother, but to find that peace within himself. And that scene, I can look on it now and have a different perspective on it, but in the moment I was like, I don't know what to do with this. There was just it's so heavy, and there's many different readings on it, which I guess is the mark of successful storytelling, when no matter what the feeling is, you make somebody feel something. And for that reason, I really do love that scene, because it made me really stop and think and reflect on my own experiences. So that's how I've come full circle with that scene.
I think that had we had more distance between that moment and when Tom had found out about the conversion therapy gummies, it might have been better. I know they only had 10 episodes. But the other thing was, I wish, it feels like a conversation that doesn't have the context of those gummies, even though it does, right?
Yeah.
It just feels like that would be a conversation that she was having about his father's homophobia when he got home, about like if his father still isn't like, you want me to be gracious, but he's not being gracious. Instead, we have it in a high stakes environment. So it's like it's carrying a lot of weight in the story. I mean, and that was the point. So I do wrestle with it about like what it's saying, how it's saying it, the fairness in a conversation like that. I do believe it's supposed to be unfair. Because what is the line? It's grace is something you give someone that they don't deserve, and mercy is what you give, is what you saving them from what they do deserve. So in some ways, she is implying that Barton does deserve to get left up at Saturn, but I don't want you to do that. And they do have, there's the apology from Barton, which I wish was an I love you instead of an apology, but we got an apology. Um, and it was a good apology for the time that we had. I just wish there's so much more I wanted from Barton and Tom's um, relationship exploration that we just didn't quite get because of time and because we had to do all the storylines about the pieces. So there is that. Oh, Tom Swift is like, it's fun, but it's heavy. Like it's just
yeah.
And
it's like
just
all this like science stuff, and then it's like, wait a minute, we're gonna like make you reflect on your own childhood trauma, and I'm like, sweet.
And it definitely did feel like timing was an issue there, because I do agree that felt like more of a general conversation between Tom and his mom, and it would have been easier to buy if that was a general conversation about Barton. But literally the end of the previous episode revealed what he'd done, and then in the first half to middle of this episode, suddenly Tom was supposed to be all right with it. And I know then we got to the whole forgiveness thing at the end, but again, I think you said, Sabrina, that this having high stakes is usually a good thing, but it kind of undercut the emotion of the story, because of course Tom was going to make that decision because he was a good person, but because of both timing and the high stakes of the situation, it felt like he was, I don't want to say manipulated, but talked into making a decision that he wasn't ready to make.
Yeah, guilt felt very heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be honest with our listeners. I did not watch episode 9 after we talked about it. I just didn't watch it. So I know about the situation, obviously, from what we talked about, but I don't have that context going into it. And I felt like I didn't need it, because regardless of the events of episode 9 and what we learned, to me, still, in my opinion, the apology and forgiveness from Barton was premature, in my opinion. I'll keep saying in my opinion. But I know, like, time constraints. They had 10 episodes. They needed to tell a complete story, because who knows if they got a season 2. And I'm sure they would have like undid some things and unpacked it more if they got more seasons. But just in that moment when he's talking to his father at the end and they have their exchange, I kind of wanted Tom to express that he was doing it for himself. Like he needed to hear that and accept it to free himself. And I didn't get that. It felt like he was doing it for everybody else other than himself. And I worry about the character and what he's still feeling. It just felt kind of secondary when I wanted it to be at the top.
Because it became about Barton and what
and I don't care about Barton, as we established last week.
Yes. Well, also because I might retract my statement about Barton's apology, because one thing I did notice, his apology was about Tom trying to change Tom into what he believes a man is supposed to be. But at the same time, he says that, but you are the man who can save me. I was like, oh, this is why I wanted that. I love you. Because at the end of what you're saying is, he's the only one who can get you down, but get you back to earth. And as emotional as that moment is between the two of them, I was like, you still made it about yourself, sir. You still made it about the fact that your son is the only person who can bring you back to earth. And perhaps acknowledging that was the road forward for Barton, especially with all the reflection he had to do. But I was like, just say I love you to your son. And then maybe that would have been something they would have worked through in a season 2, potentially. I mean, there was the ending part about how Barton's not actually coming back to Earth until 2096, which like, well, my brain went boop, like right after Rowan revealed that. And so there is that, but like I'm going to assume, because of how much time they spent on Tom really unpacking his feelings about his dad, even if we didn't get Barton unpacking his feelings about his son, that they would have continued doing that in season 2 had they been greenlit for 1.
Yeah, it feels like, again, timing was just basically what was undercut the importance of that scene, because that wasn't their intention, but it kind of felt like the way it came across was that Barton had almost telegraphed the fact that Tom would find this out, so told him what he wanted to hear. I know that wasn't necessarily their intention, but it just came across like there were a lot of words said, a lot of words that would have ticked boxes of what Tom needed to hear, and in the end it got the result he wanted. I know that wasn't the writer's intention, but I just think, as you said, everything came too close together. It just felt like get that out of the way, deal with that. I just think, I think was Reed said that it needed more emotional unpacking so that we could learn it was more about what Tom needed rather than what Barton needed. And again, I just think they had to write themselves into a corner there because they had no time, because obviously you had the huge cliffhanger and unfortunately no season 2 after that.
I don't want to take anything away because I know the creator also said that he was really proud to be telling a story where the parent is apologizing to the child. I'm going to paraphrase because I don't know exactly what he said, but it was in that area. And I think that is really important to show on television. In my own feeling, in my own opinion, I'll keep prefacing everything I say with that. I love seeing that, but an apology doesn't always need to be accepted for it to be impactful in a story. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. But can we circle back to the ending? Because I think that's a really important part of the episode too, is finding out the big twist at the end. And I'm gonna double down on my statement from past episodes that a cliffhanger ending is a serve. I'm sorry, guys. I loved it. I loved it. Because it's gonna ensure that this show is gonna be on every like gone too soon list for the next 10 years. Like it's just I don't want to see the story wrapped up, even though they kind of tried to do that. But with that last like we're not done yet, I was like, yeah, that's yes.
It makes you want to rewatch too, to see like what parts of the series were they really hinting at Rowan being from the future. For me, it was the flashback sequence when he's running in all that gray and tattered clothing, because at least on the CW and other, I guess, sci-fi productions too, they love putting you in something tattered and gray and washed out. And so that's what was going on with him. Then the storyline with the incredibly like genius woman who I forget what she was inventing, but with the baby who he knew and was like seemed to be part of his family. She didn't know him. And so now I was like, oh, so who is the baby to you now? Since we know that you're from the future, like, is that an uncle? Is it your mama? Like who, your grandmother? Like, who is this baby to you? Who is this family to you? Like there's so many things like to unpack with Rowan now, and to see like where he might have been giving it away just a little bit, that he was from the future.
I'm excited. Like, I know that I think I've had a really complicated time watching this show, which is at no fault of the show. Again, like a mark of a really successful show, but it's not going to be the end of my journey. I want to rewatch it and to like pick up on all the things. And like, now that I know what happens, like I can have a fresh set of eyes and just watch everything and really like have a new outlook on it. But I have to say, I think this ending is really good. It doesn't feel like, it feels like a semicolon. Like it feels like this is a really good ending to this story, and it could continue, but we don't necessarily need it to continue, because there's still, from this moment, to go back and see how this plays into the story is a whole another thing all in and of itself. Like we don't really necessarily need season 2 as much as we want it to understand how we got to this ending, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm just trying to like rationalize like the ending.
No, it is, you're right about cliffhangers being a service. This is one of the best cliffhangers that did not make me angry. Like it didn't make me feel like they just cut the show. Like I do feel like they
my time. I didn't feel like I wasted my time.
Yeah. So it's just like, it's a cliffhanger that works for Tom's story. And like, it tells you that there's more story beyond this. And I would love to see that story, but they told a complete enough story where I don't feel cheated.
Yeah. There's no like huge question. Like we're not like, did this person die? Even though there's that kind of a question, but it's not an important one. It's not like Tom got shot and we're like, oh, we don't know if he lived or died. It's a cliffhanger that is juicy, but is like, it's a complete sentence. So
yeah,
that's my take.
No, it'll definitely benefit, I think, a rewatch or enhance a rewatch, because it felt to me like an ending, like, oh, the first thing I wanted to do was talk to you guys about it. And it wasn't in a, oh, that's it then. It was a, what does this mean for the show? It definitely, it didn't leave me in the same way that, like I said, the Legends of Tomorrow cliffhanger did, isn't like all that for nothing. I feel like this definitely would impact the story, and it would, as you said, you could find more story in a rewatch of season 1. And like this show was so extravagant and like so extra, and it thrived for being that, and yet it still caught me off guard with that ending. We know like this show, it has a technological answer for everything. It also exists in the same supernatural universe as Nancy Drew, and yet
And time travel now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
The multiverse.
That's so exciting. Oh, and they didn't leave us, like, I'm glad that we know that Barkley can be saved.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that like he's gonna be okay. I did find it funny that they really had Tom, like, I might keep my dad up there to keep like the Barkley around.
Even I was like, oh, Tom.
That conversation with his mom. Like if he was like, so Mom, I chose Barkley. And that's just gonna circle Saturn until he runs out of gas.
I mean, who's been there for him?
Right.
Yes, exactly.
That robot.
And I don't really care if Eskel's alive or dead. Like, sir, if you're on a Cayman Island, fine. If you're at the bottom of whatever lake is around here, fine.
I know. That was very much like, sorry that happened, or I'm happy for you. Either way, I don't like. God bless you on your journey.
Yes, but if there's one thing I would like them to continue on, if they could do it in like the universe, it would be if they somehow seeded what was going on with Lino into a Nancy Drew episode, so that storyline is complete.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, that's one of the stories that never really got to breathe. So it would be cool if, again, Nancy's so supernatural, but I feel like there's room for technology in there and like superpowers as well. So that would be cool if they managed to see that in somehow.
I hope so. Fingers crossed. I mean, I know they got their own thing going on in season 4. I don't know what's happening. I have not read any plots, but I've seen the cars and the ladies look lovely together, reunited. Like, it just looks like it's a good old time. And Kennedy has been teasing Nace things. So, like, Nace stickers, I hope y'all are all right, because you know she's going to keep dropping more and more things as we get closer to this season.
Get ready.
Yes. Oh, and we'll be ready by then. Perhaps y'all will make a nice stripper out of me yet, y'all. By the time we get to season
we got a little
4.
time. I think
this is what I'm most excited to see on our watch is Sabrina's evolution through the ships.
Yes.
Will she switch boats? Stay tuned.
Or will I try to command both? We'll see. Like
possibilities.
Possibilities, though. Apparently, I mean, they did warn me it is dry out here for Nick and Nancy once they break up. Not scene wise, I don't think, but as far as shippers, like, it's a few of us in a dinghy, and that's about it. And I'm on season 1, so I may not even remain in the dinghy by the time we get to season 4.
It's going to be a whole journey for you.
Not a dinghy.
Yes. But I guess this would be like a great place to end. I know we usually roast or we toast, but I kind of feel like
we roasted and toasted throughout.
Right,
so
yes, exactly. And I love ending on the Drewiverse. It's just such a special universe on the CW. And I'm happy we got to be on the Tom Swift ride. I love that we're on the Nancy Drew ride. If they do any more spin-offs, I will be watching. I just think the Drewiverse is amazing.
Amen.
Without a doubt.
Okay, well, that is how we'll end. And I cannot wait to watch episode 5 of Nancy Drew. Probably this weekend, y'all. I can't get enough of it. But we are the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Bye, y'all.